Justin, we have had such a monumental weekend of championship action, which we will talk about very shortly. But first of all, we have to give a mention to a ginormous game in the championship tomorrow night.
Yeah, you do not get much bigger than Burnley v Leeds on a Monday night. They've kept it free for us. No distractions from the weekend. We're heading straight into the title contender game. Free from everything else. Cannot wait.
Yeah, it is going to be huge. It's, of course, third v first, ladies and gents. And we'll be doing a Reacts episode straight off the back of that game. But if you simply cannot wait for us to upload the episode to the usual podcasting platforms, we will be live streaming live to YouTube straight after the game. So if you want to head over to the second tier YouTube channel and get our reaction straight off the back of that game happening, it's going to be a crazy night, ladies and gents, because it is such a big game. So we look forward to seeing you there for that. And if you don't have a chance to get with us on the YouTube channel, then we, of course, will have the Reacts episode in your usual podcast platform. So we look forward to that. But first of all, let's digest what's happened this weekend, Justin, because it's been a crazy few games, hasn't it? And we'll begin with probably one of the shock scorelines of the season. Sheffield United 0, Hull City 3. 3-word reviews for Hull. Rainbow Tigers says, blunted the blades. Rich says, absolute effing mauling. Tiger Robin says, mauled the blunts. Stephen says, starting to click. And yeah, Justin, we would talk about this game on Friday, weren't we? I perhaps saw Hull getting a draw in this, maybe sneaking a win. I never saw a 3-0 win coming in a million years, but what a result for Ruben Sellers' boys.
Yeah, monumental result, massive result, and a great performance as well. You've got to throw that one in. But I think going into the game, I think 95% of people would have backed Sheffield United, considering just their home form. Hull have a little bit of inconsistency results. Performance has been, getting better, but they have been inconsistent results wise. So you would have forgiven them for putting in a good performance, but maybe being on the other end of a defeat here. But no, they won. They won emphatically. They won comfortably, and were fully deserving of their 3 points.
Yeah, well, since Ruben Sellers has come in, they have been playing better, but still, I don't think I ever saw this coming. I don't think I could really comprehend just how crazy a scoreline it is, because the thing is, the 3-0 scoreline does Hull so much justice, doesn't it? Sheffield United were easily second best in this one, and we haven't really seen anyone make them look like that this season. And I'm sure Sheffield United fans will play it down and say, look, we've had a lot of games, a lot of injuries, it's just caught up with us. And I don't think that'll be fair on Hull, because I think they'll be playing down how good they were, because they were fantastic, Justin. The game plan was not even inch perfect, millimetre perfect. And Ruben Sellers deserves all the plaudits for this tactical masterclass. And so well done to Hull. They were outstanding, without a doubt, their biggest result of the season, and almost the dictionary definition of a statement win.
Yeah, it was one of them where I think, the early start, the fast start from Hull with Matt Crooks scoring that brilliant goal, I think really did help. Obviously, it gets this, it calms the stadium down, obviously it quietens the home crowd, but also it gives you a little bit of a chance to relax as a Hull player. And really, you can really concentrate on that game plan a little bit, because you've got the lead, and all you've got to do then is just play out the game plan to perfection. And I think, again, that's why you already mentioned it, but that's where you've got to really credit Ruben Sellers, because you really need your players on board if you're going to play the way they did. They were compact. They countered beautifully. I mean, the way they countered for the first goal, I think, is a great example, a perfect example of how you counter-attack a team. 3 players breaking forward, loose ball, Matt Crooks hits it so sweetly and perfectly. It had to be special to beat Mike Cooper, and it was. But I think even if it wasn't such a brilliant goal from Matt Crooks, I think they would have scored anyway, because the way they countered was just brutal from a Sheffield United perspective. But considering the firepower that Sheffield United had to offer, they didn't offer anything. And I think that's a lot of credit to how Hull were organised, they were structured, and they allowed Blades to play when they wanted him to play, but they countered with a lot of emphasis on getting it forward quickly.
Yeah, and if this is a sign of things to come with Hull City, then relegation will very quickly become a distant memory, won't it? We were saying on Friday that I was confident they would climb away from the bottom 3 in time. I was thinking more after this game, not including this game, because there had been a clear improvement under Ruben Sellers at this early stage, and I think they've signed really well this January as well. Matt Crooks gave us an excellent reminder of what he's capable of with that superb first goal. Joe Gellard was superb as well. Always good to see him playing regular football. And we shouldn't forget, by the way, how much of a state Hull were in when Ruben Sellers came in. The whole club was really in a state of flux behind the scenes and on the pitch. But just as he's been doing now for the past couple of years, he keeps the ship steady and keeps them progressing. So even though it's only been a matter of weeks that Ruben Sellers has been there, I think Hull have played a blinder by getting him in. And there'll probably be a few clubs this season thinking to themselves, we should have got him when we had the chance, because he's doing an unbelievable job at Hull City, isn't he?
Well, yeah, he is. And again, I think this is the thing. When we've suggested that Hull are improving, a lot of people have sort of looked at the results and gone, well, they're not winning enough games. But you've got to look at performances and how poor they were under Tim Volter, and how much better they are under Ruben Sellers. The players feels like they're all playing for Ruben Sellers, which is a big thing. There's a lot of friction between Tim Volter and the playing squad, and even with the supporters. Ruben Sellers has given them a club to get behind, which I don't think they've had since obviously Liam Rosenior, which wasn't that long ago, but you get the point. And again, some managers have come in this season. You look at Matt Bloomfield, he's not had an immediate reaction at Luton. Mark Robbins has not had an immediate reaction at Stoke. It just goes to show how difficult it is to do that. They're experienced managers or semi-experienced. So, Ruben Sellers to come in and do what he's doing, I think goes to show how much quality he does have. And you are right. I think a lot of clubs who had the chance to appoint him might be looking at themselves and thinking, why didn't we? Ridiculous.
Yeah, he is doing such a fine job at Hull City. And the other thing is, this result really does turn the pressure up on a lot of sides, both at the top and bottom of the table. With Hull, they've jumped above Derby, Portsmouth and Stoke when they probably weren't expecting it. So a brilliant night for Hull City. For Sheffield United, we were just saying in the preview show how they had turned corner after a bit of a wobble, 3 wins on the bounce. And then this happens. It is worth mentioning they did have a goal incorrectly ruled out for offside when the score was 1-1, so maybe that would have changed things a bit. But still, it's only the second time they've lost at Bramall Lane in the league this season. After the game, Chris Wilder was making a point about players missing and fatigue. He was saying there's a couple of players in there that really need a rest, and we are playing a left back in the middle of the park and a young 19-year-old in there as well. So with that being said, do you think this is a game which shows that Sheffield United still need to strengthen before that window closes, Justin?
Yeah, I think it's quite obvious, actually. And I think a lot of people will look at Chris Wilder and think that he's trying to make excuses. And don't get me wrong, they come across as excuses, but he's basically saying to the board, I need players. I need players because, when we've got 3 game weeks, this is the outcome of that third game. There'll be a drop-off, and there was a drop-off because at no point in this game did Sheffield United find their rhythm at all. And you can maybe look at that and go, well, maybe the players were lethargic and conceding early when you're not quite there. You're up against it then at that point. So, yeah, they do still need players. They need that defensive quality. I know Harry Souttar, we've spoken about at length a lot. Missing him, I think, is a huge blow. Bringing in a central midfielder to inject more energy, more robustness into the centre of the park, I think will be hugely beneficial again. And I think as well, you got to bear in mind that some attacking qualities come in. Chris Wilder's got to find a system that's going to get to the best of what they can do as well. So there's some moving parts there for Chris Wilder that needs to sort out, and I think he will because he's experienced and he's shown that this season he can do it. But yeah, they still need a lot more quality, I think.
Yeah, well, Sheffield United have one of the deepest squads when it comes to squad depth. So it says a lot about how many injuries that they've had, that they're possibly at a stage where they still need more bodies. Hamza Chowdhury is reportedly coming in, which looks a good move. That's the robust midfielder you're talking about right there, isn't it, Justin? We mentioned the other day how John Joe Kenny is apparently on his way as well. So they'll be welcome additions. I suppose the saving grace for Sheffield United with this result is Sunderland slipped up. Burnley and Leeds are playing each other, so one's dropping points. But this was a worrying performance because they looked so off it. Hopefully it is just a one-off where they just got outdone by Ruben Sellers' genius, and it is just a case of the games catching up with them, but they can't afford any more showings like this, otherwise it will really, really cost them. They've got Derby next week, so things could be a lot worse for them, Justin. Last-minute equaliser from Nathaniel Ogbetter saw Plymouth get just their 4th point of the season away from home at Sunderland. 2-2. It finished. 3-word reviews for Sunderland. Michael says, stop conceding late. Tony says, Sunderland doing Sunderland. Victoria says, did a Sunderland. Dean says, typical bloody Sunderland. You get the gist of the 3-word reviews right there. For Plymouth, Matt on our Patreon says, glimmer of hope. Jazzy says, proof of life. Casey says, comeback is on. Argo Memes says, dopey Dilks devastated, which is in reference to my banker being Sunderland on Friday's preview show. Yeah, didn't see this one coming, Justin. And it's got to be said, it's good to see Plymouth fans getting a reward for that 800-mile round journey.
Yeah, you know what? Fair enough to him. If they should come out and celebrate in the faces of every individual pundit, podcaster, anyone who's backed Sunderland in this game. They have very much the right to come out and say what they want, because we bet against Plymouth a hell of a lot this season. So for it to fall in their favour, I think, fair play. But no one saw this game coming. No one saw this result coming, I should say. It was quite incredible, really. And as I say, fair play. The result was deserved. The performance is a reward to the fans, to the players, for backing your team, whatever the outcome. And as you say, I think the last-minute goal, the Plymouth fans deserved it, absolutely.
Yeah, not a great look for a guy who said this could be a cricket score for Sunderland on Friday. I've been reminded a fair bit about that from Plymouth fans, so cheers, guys. But yeah, Plymouth deserve an immense amount of credit for this result. I will mainly focus on Sunderland, though, because we saw them in the flesh in midweek against Derby, Justin, and they were quite flat. And that was the case here as well. I watched this game back, and from the first 20 minutes, you could just see Sunderland weren't at the races. And in an alternative universe where they didn't concede that equaliser, we'd probably be sat here right now saying they're actually quite fortunate to get out of this with all 3 points. So the equaliser was in a way justified, because Plymouth did play well and Sunderland didn't. So it's a bit strange with Sunderland. They just don't seem to have the right flow right now that they had earlier in the season, and have made pretty hard work of games they should be cruising against Derby and Plymouth, and seem to be stuck in a bit of a slump, Justin, don't you think?
Well, I don't think they're stuck in a slump. I get the point.
What do you call these 2 games then?
I don't call it a slump. A slump is a bit more than just 2 games where you're not quite at the races. I think that's what it is. They've lost 1 game since the start of December. You call it a slump, but they've won 3 of the last 6 as well. They've beaten Sheffield United and drawn with Burnley in those games. So I think a slump is probably an overreaction, or a word. I would say an overreaction to what was a poor performance. Yeah, they weren't quite at it against Derby, but they saw the game out.
Would a dip be more?
I think a slump's probably too negative. I think a dip's absolutely fine, but you're at the end of a 3-game week here. Chris Wilder was making the point of his players being tired. It's going to be the same across the board in the Championship. Some teams will react better. I just don't think Sunderland did. They didn't really get into a state where they controlled this game, and they were frustrated against a very stubborn Plymouth side. So they made a lot of mistakes in the game. I think it's a dip, it's a poor performance, and I think anything more than that is probably a bit more of an overreaction than anything.
I apologise for saying slump. I didn't realise we had gone all football cliches all of a sudden. But yeah, they were always going to have a dip at some point, because almost every team in Championship history has a dip in some shape or form during a season, don't they? But this one, this dip feels like it's more tactical than fatigue or anything like that for me. The standout thing being Enzo Lefebvre on the left wing. He's had moments in these 3 games since he made his debut, but I don't know, almost crowbarring him into this team on the left-hand side doesn't seem to be working. And I know we have to caveat it by saying he's new to the league. He hasn't played many minutes this season, but the other thing is he looks gassed after an hour of every game that he's played so far, and I don't know why Labrie doesn't take him off more. But it's not just him. Joe Bellingham's not been able to influence games as much as he was. Patrick Roberts hasn't been able to cause many problems, and Chris Mepham, Luke O'Nien at the back don't seem as solid as they often have done this season. So Labrie has a few issues on his hands here. It's something which has to be remedied, because otherwise, if they don't sort it out quickly, they could lose a fair bit of ground on the other teams in the top 4. Luckily, Sheffield United losing and Burnley and Leeds playing each other on Monday night means it's not that much ground, but it's still not great, Justin.
I think when you put it in the context of them chasing automatic promotion, yes, it isn't great. But if they're going to solidify themselves in the playoffs, I think they're absolutely fine. I know you mentioned that NZFA being crowbarred into the team. It's a fair thing to bring up. I thought he might have been eased into things because, again, not only do you risk him getting injured, but also the tactical state of the team. You risk not upsetting it, but certainly you have to change a little bit in terms of how you play. But I think it will pay off, I think, over the course of the season because he's going to do more good than he is bad in LFA. You'd hope anyway. So I think, again, you've got to also mention the fact that Wilson Isidore has been missing some big chances. I think that draw against Burnley would have been a very, very comfortable win if he'd have taken, his shot in the second half and was put through by Lefebvre or any one of his penalties. So again, we'd be in a completely different state of conversation at this point if that was done. So, there are minute things that need tweaking. I don't think there's a large issue at play here, but there are small things that need tweaking if they're going to be a great side. They're a good side, not a great side at the moment.
Well, they might end up being the only team who failed to beat Plymouth at least once this season, and come the end of the season, Sunderland may look back at that and go, "That's really cost us." That's what these games can look like when you look back on them in hindsight. Potentially a bit of good news for Sunderland though, Justin, and it's to do with England, because the new England boss, Tommy Tuchel, is reportedly willing to call up players from the Championship. He's sent his assistant Anthony Barry to watch Sunderland's Joe Bellingham as well as Burnley's James Trafford. Which is interesting, isn't it, Justin? I've always been a big advocate for Championship players being called up to the England squad. Gareth Southgate always ignored me. So I hope Tommy Tukes isn't a coward like him.
Probably a bit harsh on old Gazza there. Sir Gareth, I should say.
No, fuck him.
Say what you want now, he's not in charge. No, I think it depends on the player. They've got to have a lot of potential, I think. A lot of potential. There's no good calling up a 25-year-old. Like Dave Nugent getting called up, I think at that point he did have a fair bit of potential, but he wasn't exactly a 25, 30 goal season striker. Jay Bothroyd getting a call up as well by Fabio Cabello. Just weird scenarios, but I think Joe Bellingham's got a lot of quality and you can see him stepping up to the first team at some point. James Trafford makes sense because I think in terms of English goalkeepers, there's just not a lot around in terms of quality. You got Dean Henderson, who's okay. Sam Johnson, who's a bit meh. James Trafford's the next sensible one behind Jordan Pickford. I like it. But as I say, I think they've got to be young and with a lot of potential. It's no good calling up a Ryan Giles, for example.
Well, that's a needless dig. But it's of course they've got to deserve it on merit. They've got to be called up on merit. That's absolutely right. But there is just so much young talent in the Championship nowadays that players should be considered for me. I mean, some of these lads will be playing at the top level next season anyway, so why should it matter what league they're in if they're in the Championship a matter of months ago? I mean, a key example of that is Calvin Phillips back when he was with Leeds in the Championship. England were crying out for someone like him, and I was banging that drum at the time. Then almost immediately, as soon as Leeds got promoted, he got called up. Mm-hmm. And I just look at that and go, well, he's obviously not developed that much in the space of a couple of months, has he? So that's why Southgate was always, he would always say he needs players playing at the top level, but then he would also call up Jordan Henderson while he was playing in Saudi. So it was always a bit contradictory for me when Southgate was doing things like that. But yeah, I hope this does become a thing because the Championship is a very high standard league nowadays. You've got some plumbing good youngish English keepers in the Champo nowadays, haven't you? So it shouldn't matter if they're in the second tier or not for me.
I get most of the point, but I do think being in the Premier League, you are exposed to high quality players, and more advanced tactical systems you're up against.
And Justin, I get that. That's why Southgate always stuck with the Premier League. But I mean, you look at the Championship. For the Championship for me is easily in the top 10 leagues in the world now. Mm-hmm. It's a very high standard league, and because it's the second tier, it gets almost looked down upon, really.
Yeah, again, I think that sort of bias is quite unfair. Not from you, I think from the powers that be, if you like. I mean, Ivan Toney, when he scored that 30 goals for Brentford, you could have argued that maybe he deserved an opportunity then. But again, it's that balance between whether or not they've got a lot of potential. Do they need to show it in the Premier League or not to really convince us that they are capable of stepping up? Because you look at Patrick Bamford, who was good for double figures every season, stepped up to the Premier League, scored a fair amount of goals, and then was been fairly hopeless since that double-figure season he had for Leeds under, I think it was Bielsa. I can't quite remember now, but you get the point. So it'd be nice, but I don't think it's going to happen too often. But you are right. The Championship is one of the best leagues in the world, second best league in the world. No, the best league in the world. So, yeah.
The best league in terms of entertainment when it comes to quality. It's definitely in the top 10.
Best league in the world.
Yeah, it's also the best league in the world, you're right, what am I saying? But yeah, it's a pretty sad indictment of Southgate and his ignorance towards the Championship that in the time he was England manager, Argentina called up 2 players while they were playing in the Championship. And they're the bloody world champions, but we didn't call up anyone from our own league, so that's not a great look, is it? So I'm hoping that it does change under Tommy Tooks. But let's get back to the game. Just in a cracking result for Plymouth, a great response after that 5-0 thumping in midweek and the subsequent loss of Morgan Whittaker, of course. Miran Muslic called this result a step forward for his side. One might say it's the first step of a marathon in terms of their survival chances, but it's a step nonetheless, Justin.
Depends how you measure the steps, because things have been that bad for Plymouth. I think a shuffle forward is good enough, isn't it? But I do agree with him. I think everything that he spoke about, I know it's quite funny because I mentioned this in the midweek show, everything he spoke about, in his rousing speech, his rousing 4-minute speech that went viral on social media, wasn't apparent in that Burnley game. But you come to this game and it was, everything he spoke about was there. You wanted them to be awkward and horrible to play against, and they were. They pushed Sunderland into making those mistakes. They were compact. They were horrible. They were ugly to play against. And they could have won this game quite easily as well. Ryan Hardy missed a header from 6 yards out. Could have been a completely different game before that Patterson own goal. But Plymouth did a really good job of managing, a really good atmosphere at the Stadium of Light. And as I say, they became the team that Muslic talked about in that rousing speech. So, yeah, suffocated Sunderland, made it horrible for them to play against them, and uncomfortable, showed a lot of character and courage as well to get back into the game. So, yeah, I do agree, it is a big, big step forward.
Yeah, I think this shows hope is not completely lost with Plymouth. It's been starting to look that way recently, but they still have something to give, and they do have some players who can do a job at this level. Bali Mumba showed here what he can do. He can be a bright spark for Plymouth in the final 18 games or whatever. I like the look of Timothus Puhac, the new Polish defender they've got. There's a few others as well who are probably worthy of a mention. But look, Plymouth have been appalling recently, and a 7-point gap to safety is quite big for a team who have only won 5 points from 13 games. But if they reinvest that Morgan Whittaker money, they can give themselves a fighting chance of staying up. We don't want them to get cut adrift, do we, Justin? Because it would become a bit dull for the final 3 months of the season. So we'll see if they give Miran Muslic some backing, particularly with his Churchillian speeches as well. In Tony Mowbray's first home game back in charge of West Brom, the Baggies smashed Portsmouth 5-1. 3-word reviews for West Brom. Paul says Mowbray is back. Stu says Viva Tony Mowbray. Hockers says Mowbray's magnificent Baggies. Dan says attack, attack, attack. For Pompey, Scott says we can't rotate. Jamie says absolutely dog shit. Nigel says standard away performance. Go on, Mobes, lad. 5-1 for the Mobes, Justin.
I think the perfect example of the game being summed up and Mowbray being summed up was he walked into the presser with, guess what, Ryan?
Was it Maltesers?
Incorrect. You're close. It was a bag of Rebels in hand. There should be a brand deal here, but yeah, it was quite a return. This was the sort of thing I was talking about in our preview episode about, there being a feel-good factor and also maybe tapping into the attacking quality of this team. They've got an abundance of wingers. In fact, he played the wingers in this game. He didn't play with a conventional number 9. He went 4-4-2.
He played forward, didn't he?
Oh yeah, that's what I mean. I don't know how you describe it. You went 4-4-2 with Dean Garner and Jed Wallace up front. Neither are obviously natural strikers, but they both delivered in their movement, stretching the game, providing presence. It was a brilliant performance, and again one you'd expect from a Tony Mowbray team. And this is an exciting example of the potential for the rest of the season. We had a defensive stability, almost pragmatism that was working under Carlos Corberán. But Mowbray's got a different idea, and it's good to see it falling into the players so soon.
Yeah, this was sublime. You're absolutely right, Justin, from West Brom. I think it must be pointed out, Nicholas Schmidt in the Pompey goal had an absolute stinker. Yeah. The first 4 goals he could have done better with, but West Brom But West Brom ultimately carved Portsmouth open. It was a very, very impressive homecoming for Old Mobes. The star of the show was, of course, Grady Diangana. 2 goals and 2 assists. He only had 2 goal contributions up until this point. And with him and Jed Wallace playing up front together, it was just beautiful to see. And West Brom played some really nice stuff, as Tony Mowbray's teams do. People may typecast him as not that type of manager, but his teams do play some great stuff. And I did a bit of a double take earlier, Justin, when I was looking at the table. West Brom were 5th. They're there despite only 5 wins in 23. They've won the same amount of games in that time as Luton. Mm-hmm. How does that work? I don't really understand it at all. But I mean, I don't mean that with any disrespect, West Brom fans. I just mean they've not really had any form for months, but are still sat 5th. It's incredible. But as far as their playoff chances go, it's a pretty good position to be in when you're sat here despite not having had the greatest form and you've just got a new manager in.
Well, you're talking about consistency. I know they've been consistently drawing games, but like you said, West Brom haven't really got going yet this season. It's just been chipping away at things, and he's still been in and around the playoffs. And that's why I think that, that Tony Mowbray is in a really good place to take this team forward. Obviously, you've got to get that balance right, and I'm sure they'll get punished at times. They lost in midweek to Middlesbrough, so we can't get too excited. But they went at this Portsmouth team. They went at him. They had him. They punished him. And that's, a Tony Mowbray team, when it smells blood, they go for it. They really go for it. They go for the jugular, and it can be quite scary, if you're coming up against it, because they are an attacking outfit, Tony Mowbray sides. So, it's an exciting one. And again, this West Brom team's got more attackers that have an abundance of quality than you think. We mentioned Grady Diangana, Jed Wallace is another. John Swift scored in this game. Mikey Johnson was brilliant as well. I think it was his goal where he just literally ran through the entire Portsmouth defence, just walked through with a lot of swagger, really. And that's what I mean. It's been built to play this way. We've just not seen it. And now we're seeing it, or we've got a glimpse of it. And I'm really excited to see what he can do.
Yeah, well, West Brom were last season were absurdly consistent, weren't they? Mm-hmm. They didn't really have a bad patch until the final few games of the season. And Carlos Corberán looks to have done it again this season. And Tony Mowbray is more than capable of carrying that on. The thing is with Mowbray, he is brilliant at the man management side of things, isn't he? He's a great manager for putting an arm around a player and getting them playing well again. And West Brom have a few players like that who need someone like Tony Mowbray. I mean, Grady Diangana, great example. And Corberán had managed it in the past, maybe not to the same levels this season. So that's why Mowbray will be a great fit here, and fingers crossed we get plenty more entertainment like this, because it will be great to see. But Portsmouth's away woes continue, Justin. 7 straight defeats in all competitions on the road, 11 losses in their last 14 away trips, but at home they've won 6 of their last 7, scoring 19 and only conceding 4. So the question has got to be asked, Justin, can you remember any team in the time that we've been doing this podcast who have a bigger contrast in their home and away form as Portsmouth do? Because it's like watching 2 different teams, isn't it?
It literally is like watching 2 different teams. What we saw against West Brom is a team that was terrified. They were scared. As soon as the West Brom scored their first, they crumbled. And it's just that mental resilience away from home. Is it there? And it's obviously something that John Messina needs to get a grip of. But I think, just thinking off the top of my head now, I can't remember a team that had a bigger contrast than this. Because they're very good at football when they're playing at Fratton Park, but they forget how to play football anywhere else. It's quite staggering, really. So, there needs to be a lot of... I don't even know. I think we've spoken about it before. Do they need a psychologist? Do they need more experienced players, more leaders on the pitch? There's just no right answer, I don't think, because you get some teams that are very good away from home and some that are just literally hopeless. And Portsmouth are one of a few teams, but the contrast is, staggering, absolutely staggering.
Yeah, it's astonishing, isn't it? And there will be other teams who will say, well, my team's shocking on the road as well, like Plymouth, for example. But Plymouth are also not great at home either.
Yeah.
Portsmouth are like Real Madrid at Fratton Park. And then as soon as they get on the team coach for an away game, it's like the aliens from Space Jam are just sucking the talent out of them. It's quite insane, really. The crazy thing is, though, they had easily the best away record in League One last season. They only won 3 more points at home than they did on their travels. So it's weird, isn't it? It's a very recent problem that has just come about. And I guess the issue is I mean, I'm assuming here, but I guess it's just a case of you lose one, then another, then another, and then another, and then you're stuck in that vicious cycle where you go into an away game with the knowledge in your mind that you're struggling on the road, and then it's just playing on the players' minds. The mindset's not great from the off. So it's a really difficult thing to correct, but I don't think Portsmouth can just be relying on results at home, because if they were to turn all of a sudden, then they're buggered, aren't they? So it's a really tricky one to solve for John Mousinho, isn't it, Justin?
But that's what I mean. That's the weird thing, because you mentioned that they lose one, then they lose another, and they lose another, and all of a sudden they're just going to think they're losing. They're just going to assume they're going to lose every away game, but that's not impacting their home form, which is why it's so strange. Because I know Fratton Park is a unique ground, and the home atmosphere at Fratton Park is superb. The home fans are brilliant. The away fans are great as well, but it's obviously not impacting performances. But you know, it's not impacting confidence going into home games. Obviously, it's adding a lot more pressure and stress going into those home games, because they're going to have to win those home games. Because, you know, is their home form good enough? Is it good enough for them to stay up alone? No, they need to be getting results away from home as well, but they're not. So yeah, you'd have thought that'd be impacting things as well, which is why this is all the more strange. I think that's that's the thing you've got to throw out. It's just strange, and it's just one thing you can't answer. It's impossible.
The good news for them is they've got 2 home games coming up, and that is certainly where the heart is for Pompey, so they'll be looking forward to them. Justin, let's have a look back at how our preview show picks got on in the preview show, brought to you by SBK. Our bet builder was, of course, on Sheffield United v Hull, and a £10 stake was due to return £365. And let's be honest, we were never going to get a winning bet builder on this with the way this game actually played out. We had Sheffield United to win. We had Hull to have over 8.5 shots. They had 8. I mean, that's just annoying. We also had both teams to score. I did not expect to be sat here cursing Sheffield United for letting us down on that one. But it wasn't a complete whitewash, because we also had Finlay Burns to be carded at 7-1. Now, he went off after 55 minutes having not been carded. However, because of fresh legs with SBK, the bet rolled over onto Matty Jacob, who did get carded in the 81st minute. So hopefully there's a few people out there who at least had that one and had a bit of luck in that game. But anyway, on to our second tier featured multiple, where a £10 stake was due to return at £150. We had Sheffield United to win. Nope. Sunderland to beat Plymouth. Nope. Oxford to beat Stoke. Nope. West Brom to beat Portsmouth was the only correct pick for us. So not a great round for us, we'll put it that way, but we'll be back with another round of picks in this coming Friday's preview show, brought to you by SBK. Justin, let's have a quick break. After that, we'll talk about the carnage at Watford from the past few days and a blinding win for Norwich City. Welcome back to the Second Tier podcast, and it's now time for us to reveal the winner of our latest edition of Jameson's Weekend Hero. And every single week we're asking you to nominate a fellow Championship fan that you believe deserves recognition. Now, that could be someone who drove you to a recent away day, or it could be a friend or relative who got you into supporting your club in the first place. Whatever it is, we want to find out. So to nominate your Jameson Weekend Hero from this weekend, send us a voice note now on WhatsApp explaining your nomination. The number is in the show notes. And of course, if we pick you, it's a bottle of Jameson that you'll win to share with your winner. But on to this week's nomination. We've got this message from Alan, who wanted to nominate his mate Matthew.
Hello, gents. I would like to nominate my best mate Matt for everything he does around football and our team, Plymouth Argyle Football Club. I thought I'd get it in now because it's unlikely I'll be able to nominate him next year when we're playing in League One. However, from sorting out the tickets to driving, literally all the admin, he gets it done. And all I have to do is wait for him to turn up, jump in the car, and be chauffeured to Home Park to watch an inevitable loss. So yes, I'd like to nominate him for everything he does for me. Because let's be honest, I think if it wasn't for him, I probably wouldn't be going to half as many games as I do go to. So yes, my best mate Matthew is my nomination. Thank you very much. Keep up the good work with the podcast. Cheers.
That's good stuff, Alan. I like that one. Very, very good. Very down to earth. But I mean, Justin, we were talking earlier about the journeys that Plymouth fans have to make, the 800-mile round trip to Sunderland this weekend. It's crazy. So I think, in a way, every Plymouth fan is a worthy nomination for our Jameson Weekend Hero. But Matt, in particular, because he sorts everything out for Alan, he is a top lad.
Yeah, definitely a thankless task. I mean, if we're a group of mates, aren't we? It's impossible organising things with you lot. It's really hard. So the person who takes responsibility deserves all the praise in the world, and Matthew is that man. And Alan, I'm sure he's very thankful. Although I'm not sure, because obviously Plymouth are losing a lot, so maybe there's an element of maybe I can miss a game here or there. But Matthew's clearly not letting him. But gotta love it. Everyone needs a Matthew. Every friendship group needs a Matthew.
Everyone needs a Matthew, and that's why we are now going to raise a glass of Jameson ginger and lime to Matthew for being the legend that he is. And Justin and I are going to have a ceremonial swig to honour Matthew the legend. Delicious. Ooh, that was really nice, that one. And remember, you can nominate your Jameson Weekend Hero right now by sending us a voice note on WhatsApp. The number is in the show notes. So it's just 60 seconds explaining your nomination, and you'll be in with a chance of winning a bottle of Jameson. You must be over 18 to enter. UK only, and T's and C's apply. Right, let's get back onto some of the action from the weekend. And after days of speculation about the future of Tom Cleverley, Watford lost 2-1 away at Coventry. 3 red reviews for Coventry. Sky Blue Cal and our Patreon says on the rise. Wado says agenda against Lampard. Luke says Frank Lampard's silence. Tiny says super Frank Lampard. Yes. Coventry fans have been, accusing us of only talking about Frank Lampard and Coventry when they lose so that we can slag him off, which is a fair comment to make, Justin, but we will give them some praise shortly. And we will, of course, talk about the Tom Cleverley developments from the past few days shortly as well, but I can't imagine the speculation around Tom Cleverley's future help with this particular game, Justin.
No, it's been a ridiculous situation, hasn't it, for Watford and Tom Cleverley, but fair enough for being so... I don't know, just respectful and you can tell he loves his job. You can tell he loves the football club, and he's handled everything with a great deal of calmness, and he's just got on with the football, and you have to love it. You have to love it, and I think that just makes him sound so much better, or come across so much better than the owners that unfortunately own the club. Yeah, it's ridiculous. You can imagine it's hard. I mean, Matty Pollock came out after the game and praised Tom Cleverley no end. So you can only imagine how much, or how the percentage of the club that is actually behind Tom Cleverley, clearly other than a couple of people. So yeah, it's a ridiculous scenario that he's found himself in, but he's handled it with a hell of a lot of calmness and yeah, really, really positive attitude, I think.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about that a bit more in a sec, Justin, because it is 3 wins from 3 for Coventry City, and there have been 3 pretty solid wins as well. They were really, really good against Watford, weren't they? It seems like Lampard has really got to grips with this team now, and they've been limiting the opposition to very little, haven't they? And he's been pulling them in the right direction, because it was pretty feasible that they could have been in a very similar position to Luton right now if it wasn't for this turnaround. So he's doing pretty well, old Frankie Lamps, isn't he?
Yeah, no, he is. I mean, going for the top 6 is about peaking at the right time, and when you're hovering around it or below the top 6, you've got to find your flow, got to find your peak. And there has been a steady development over the Christmas period where creativity has increased, chances are starting to come more sustainably. And it just feels like Frank Lampard's just getting to grips with his team, or he's getting to grips with his team, and that feels to me that what the case is, because things weren't great at the start. There's a lot of inconsistency, performances are up and down, but now it's 3 clean sheets in a row. It's 3 wins, obviously, in a row as well. He's got a team that we deemed at the start of the season good enough to compete for the automatics, and playoffs is realistic for sure.
Yeah, they're not too far off all of a sudden, are they? And perhaps Lampard's biggest achievement is getting the best out of Victor Torp, because he's been excellent in these 3 wins, scored both against Watford, and Coventry fans may have been wondering whether he was a bit of a busted flush, because Mark Robins certainly never got him playing consistently, but he's been playing really, really well under Lampard. I suppose it helps playing under one of the greatest midfielders of the past 20 years, doesn't it? But look, Coventry are playing well in general. They've got players coming back from injury and a lot of reasons for encouragement for Coventry fans. So yeah, well done to Frank Lampard. Got to tip your cap to him on that one. Do you know Jerry Halliwell was at this game, Justin?
I did, yeah, with Christian Horner, the Red Bull F1 team boss, obviously.
Yeah. He's a big Coventry fan, isn't he? But yeah, Jerry Halliwell at this game. Do you reckon she was saying to Watford's owners, stop right now, thank you very much, because this result comes after speculation about Tom Cleverley, that he was set to be sacked by Watford. Reports in Spain claimed the Hornets were going to be replacing him with former Villarreal manager Jose Raúl Martín, also known as Pajeta. The speculation was so strong that the club had to come out and deny that it was the case, calling it pure speculation. Even Gino Pozzo, the Watford owner, had to come out and say the following: "I've always believed the best possible chance of success this season is with Tom Cleverley as our head coach. There were always frustrations along the way during any season, but we always identified Tom as a bright young coach who we could work together with to help deliver success to our club. We are committed to support him and look forward to the challenges ahead." What do you think about all this, Justin?
It's just a line of "we're committed to support him and look forward to challenges ahead." You've not yet supported him. You know, you've really you stripped back recruitment in the summer. You didn't really find quality where it needs to be. I mean, Vacuum Bayo is a great example. I know he's got double figures this season, but he's not exactly spread those goals across, the entirety of the games he's played. It's just a statement of how poor I think the current playing squad is and how much it needs to be improved. He's only scored across 5 games, for example, Bayo. Don't get me wrong, there is quality in that team, and Tom Cleverley has been tapping into it, but you've not been supporting him until now, until you've had to literally come out and say, this isn't wrong. And also, this is a very random link. That doesn't come without any source, if you like, or any substance, because an ex-Villarreal manager isn't going to link with Watford out of the blue. There's going to be something to it. And unfortunately, I think it's just a case of, this is leaked when it shouldn't have been leaked, and Gino Ponzo shat himself. That's what it feels like. And he's had to come out and say these things, when in reality, I would make that gut feeling that I don't think that's the case.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I think one of two things have happened here, Justin. I think it's either an agent or a journalist putting these reports out there, and they've just looked at Watford and said, yeah, there's an easy target, and they've just ran with the story. Or the more cynical side may make me think Watford were intending to do this, but have changed their minds after the backlash from supporters. Now, I don't know which one it is that's happened here, but as we all know with Watford, it wouldn't be a surprise if the latter was the case here. I mean, I was at the Derby v Watford game last weekend, and Watford were singing the same song over and over again, Justin, and they were saying, I don't care about Gino, he don't care about me, all I care about is Tom Cleverley. And this was days before these reports came out, by the way, so the message was loud and clear from the Watford fans for pretty much all season that they love Tom Cleverley as their manager. Everyone knows they've had a fair few over the years right now, but if Watford are going to stick finally with one, they want it to be Tom Cleverley. Because the job he's done this season has completely surpassed expectations, hasn't it? He's done it with next to no backing, as you were alluding to, Justin. There's a connection between Watford fans and the manager, which we've not seen in a long time. And that's why they want him to stay in charge going forwards, Justin. That's why we've seen this huge backlash from Watford fans over the past couple of days in response to these reports, and whether there was any, fire to any fire for this smoke, I don't know. But it shows that Watford fans are 100% behind Tom Cleverley, and they don't want to see him go anytime soon.
And that's what the club needs. The club needs Tom Cleverley to stay as manager. It needs some solid structure, some solid foundation. It needs someone who is as dignified and confident and very tactile and just someone like Tom Cleverley. They've gone around in circles over and over again. Valerian Ismail, Slaven Bilic, Chris Wilder.
Justin, if you're going to name every Watford manager here for a while,
it's hard. That's the joke. That is actually the joke of it, is that I can't remember. That's just going back a couple of seasons, by the way. And for me, it just feels like the Pozzo's time is up at Watford. That's the blunt of it. The early success between 2014 and 2015 is gone. They spent just as long outside of the Premier League as they spent in the Premier League. The squad is nowhere where it needs to be. The investment isn't there, obviously. Yes, they've got a nice training ground and a revamped Vicarage Road, but the Pozzos are operating for me it's just a disgrace. And unfortunately, no one can do anything about it. They're so disassociated with the club that the only ones that are associated with the club, they're getting punished. That's the fans, the players, and unfortunately Tom Cleverley.
Yeah. The other thing is, these reports in Spain also claim this Pajeta was going to get a huge amount of backing to get Watford into the Premier League. Give Tom Cleverley the backing. He deserves it. doesn't he? Look at the job he's done and continues to do with the hand he has been dealt. It's time the Pozzos stuck with a manager and recognised what they've got in front of him, and given Tom Cleverley some backing. 'Cause look what he could do if he had a bit more funds at his disposal. Although, let's be honest, it wouldn't be the first time Watford have underappreciated the man they've already got right now, would it? So, yeah, nothing's ever a surprise with Watford Football Club. Norwich 5, Swansea 1. 3-word reviews for Norwich. Andrew says, Sargent is back. Ben says, Sargent is God. For Swansea, Reese says, Swans are sinking. Michael says, players down tools. Yeah, this game was only 1-0 with only half an hour to go. And then the Norwich players just kind of looked at each other and went, shall we just obliterate them? Let's just absolutely take them to town, Justin.
Hurting Swans is illegal, isn't it, in the UK? So I don't know what, don't know how to feel about this. The Bird Derby, the Canaries went after him. I don't know where I'm going with that one, but just trying to make violence out of anything, because that's what it felt like. Yeah, I think what it goes to show is the quality is there in this Norwich team, isn't it? When they've got everyone fit and firing, and with Josh Sargent taking his goals as well as he did, both basically copy and pasted. You know, he's hung out to the side of the defenders and he's put it into the bottom corner. It's good movements, getting in the space, and good finishes. But like I said, it's a highlight of if this Norwich team can turn it on and they're fully fit, they can do any team. And I know Swansea aren't in a great spot at the moment, but to do that in such a short space of time just goes to show how relentless and quality they can be.
Yeah, got to be said that Swansea's defending was horrendous for just about every goal. That must be pointed out. But Norwich were great, and even though Swansea did make it easy for them at times. Good to see Ante Cernak get his first goal in 12 games. Emi Marcondes was unplayable in this game, but the headline was the return of that man, Josh Sargent. 2 well-taken goals here. It was his first start since October because of a groin injury. And boy, have they missed him. Oh boy, have they missed him. You've got to wonder, Justin. I suppose the question has got to be asked, where would Norwich be right now if they had a fit Josh Sargent for the entire season? Because they would be much higher, wouldn't they? They're 11th now, 5 points off the top 6. Whereabouts do you reckon they would be?
I don't like these sorts of questions because you always put me on the spot, and I don't think it's an easy answer to give. I certainly think they'd be pushing higher, but I don't think it's all down to Josh Sargent because they do have attacking quality. I think they've missed key personnel at different times. Angus Gunn's been injured. Kenny McLean's been out for long periods of time through suspension, etc. So they have missed key players everywhere. So I don't think it's all down to Sargent. But sure, if his goals are available throughout the season and the way they play, he does help the system and how dangerous they can be. Yes, they'd be a lot better off, but I think it's, they've been unlucky with injuries to key personnel at several different periods throughout the season. So I don't think they've been much higher, if I was to make a point.
Well, I'll very much disagree with you, Justin, because this is a big statement. I genuinely think they would be in the top 2 race right now if they had him all season. I genuinely do think that. You only have to look at the results with or without him. They're averaging 1.6 points per game when he started compared to 1.1 when he hasn't. 1.6 points per game would see them in the playoffs. But the thing is, Norwich were moving through the gears and then they were just hitting top gear when he got injured. And that really derailed them. So if that didn't happen, I think we could be talking about a completely different situation with Norwich. But then the other big stat here is Norwich were the second highest scorers in the league up until the point Sargent got injured. And then while he was out, they were the 9th highest scorers in the league. That's how much of a difference this guy makes because he's the best striker in the league, for my money, easily. So they desperately needed him back. It's a shame he's had his annual 3-month absence, but it's done with now. We can forget about it. And fingers crossed, he stays fit for the rest of the season. If that does happen, Justin, Norwich will definitely be in the conversation for the playoffs at the very least, won't they?
They've got a lot of ground to make up. I know they're only 5 points off Borough in 6th place, but there's a lot of consistency that needs to be generated. And again, they've got to avoid injuries to other players as well, which again I think is the key thing. So yes, he's a key player, and I love Josh Sargent. And I think what we saw last season is when he's in that team, he's a difference. He's a difference maker. But I think they play slightly differently. So they need everyone. The gears need to be rolling. They need to be oiled up, if you like, and they haven't been at various points this season. So I don't think it's all down to Sargent. So I do agree they can be in a top 6 conversation, but a lot of consistency now needs to develop because they're coming into this game on the back of 2 defeats. it's not, they've not turned the pages, if you like. They've got to keep going.
Yeah, well, I think you say it's not all down to Sargent, which is absolutely right, but he's such a big player for Norwich, isn't he? And I think top six is the very least of where they should be aiming. And they're only 5 points off, Justin. They're not that far off. So, yeah, Norwich, hopefully this is the sign of a bright few weeks coming up for them. Middlesbrough's inconsistency hampered them once again, though. They lost 2-1 away at Preston. 3-word reviews for Borough. Steptoe says soft, leaderless, limp. Zebdi says absolute clown show. David says weak as piss. Tracy says a comedy sketch. We'll start off by talking about one of the strangest goals of the season in this game. So, Luke Ayling and Rav van den Berg for Middlesbrough are bent over with their hands on their knees, holding their heads, because I think they clashed heads with each other. They're both stood there in their own penalty box on their haunches, and then suddenly the ball gets passed back to them at the worst possible time. Ayling's basically gone, shit, I need to deal with this, makes a mess of it, and then they concede what turned out to be the winner in the 78th minute. Just bizarre, just. I don't think I've ever seen anything like that at professional football level anyway.
If we're talking about Middlesbrough being clinical, now stay with me here. They weren't clinical in this game in front of goal, but also in that situation when you're under pressure and you need to make a split-second decision and you bump heads with a teammate, you've got to go down because the ref's got to stop the game. 2 players have just been taken out with head injuries. Could be serious. It could have been in all seriousness. But in that moment, I think that just epitomised Middlesbrough in this game, where they didn't do enough to see the game through, didn't do enough to win the game. They created enough chances, didn't take them, and when they had to be critical and clinical in a big decision-making point where they bumped heads and they should have gone down, they didn't, and Preston scored one of the weirdest goals of the season.
Yeah, it would have been very interesting to see what would have happened if they went down there, because I assume the referee would have to stop it for a head injury. I don't know why they didn't just do that. It's a bit strange, isn't it? Particularly with Ayling, who's a very experienced player. He should know better, shouldn't he? But a very, very strange moment, and it ultimately cost Borough. And you're absolutely right, Justin. They'll be wondering how on earth they didn't get something from this game, because it was like the Middlesbrough of earlier in the season, wasn't it? We don't want to be seeing that again, do we? Missing chance after chance, the opposition barely having a sniff, and then taking their one chance as it comes, or 2 chances in this case. And it leaves Middlesbrough with just 2 wins in 8 now. So Michael Carrick will not be happy with his side's recent form, and they definitely need to do better. But he will be happy with their transfer business, because that has picked up, hasn't it? They've signed Morgan Whittaker for a reported fee of £8 million after his apparent no-show at Plymouth. They've also re-signed Ryan Giles, who of course had a very successful loan spell at Borough a couple of seasons ago. So yeah, 2 very exciting signings from a Middlesbrough perspective. Justin, Plymouth fans must hate Middlesbrough because Finn as last January, now Whittaker.
Yeah, the Plymouth B team is Middlesbrough now, isn't it? It's quite bonkers. Or the feeder team. It's like when Liverpool was signing every Southampton player going all those years ago. That's now the Championship version is Middlesbrough feeding off Plymouth. But yeah, I think they are good signings. You look at Morgan Whittaker and he's very clinical. There's a lot he can work on his game. He's very clinical, and when you are not quite at your best in front of goal, he can just ping one in from 20-25 yards. We've seen that. He did it in the FA Cup against Brentford just a couple of weeks ago. And then Ryan Giles, I mean, he had that breakout season, if you like, with Middlesbrough, where he scored, the amount of assists and goals he created, or chances he created from that left flank were brilliant. And he's not found that form yet. He's been poor at Luton, he's been poor at Hull. And obviously he was so good that season that you suggested he should have played for England. Which
you just love bringing up, don't you?
I do, yeah, because it's one of the daftest things I've ever heard. But if his form's that good, then sure, if he can recover that, then yeah, it's a brilliant signing.
Yeah. Well, that's going to be the big thing, isn't it? I did see a message from Joe on our Discord who compared Middlesbrough taking Morgan Whittaker to being like Lenny at the end of Mice and Men. Which is a very good reference. I like that a lot. But yeah, I'm very intrigued about the Whittaker signing. £8 million, I believe, is Middlesbrough's biggest signing since 2017. So it's an awful lot of money for them to spend on a player when I'm not entirely sure how he fits into this team, because Ben Doak, Finn Azaz have been 2 of the best attackers in the division this season, and Whittaker works best coming inside onto his left foot. So the only thing I can assume is Doak moves onto the left, Whittaker's on the right. I don't know, but I guess we'll find out soon. So it's very exciting, though. It's already a Middlesbrough side, which for me is very well stocked on talent and depth and should be nearer to the top 4 race for my money. But this business seemed like a real statement of intent. And if they just get 1 or 2 more players in, they've got a serious side where it's difficult to pick many weaknesses. So it seems like they're having the real go. And Borough fans seem excited. We had Borough fans on our Discord who were comparing it to a couple of seasons ago when they got in Cameron Archer and Aaron Ramsey in January. So they're buzzing. We just need the results to reflect that excitement, Justin.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's what it's going to be, isn't it? And that's going to be pressure on Michael Carrick as well. We'll, if he doesn't get results, you potentially have to argue that he's going to be under pressure because they have to finish in the top 6 this season. There's a lot of money that's been spent this season. The summer transfer strategy was good. It was good. The recruitment was good. And it's being bettered in January because, they're going for it. But as we saw with Hull last season, just because you sign very good players doesn't mean you're going to get good performances. So there's going to be a lot of pressure. And obviously Liam Rossini lost his job. I'm not saying Michael Carrick could lose his job, but if he doesn't get Borough in the playoffs again, questions might have to be asked.
Yeah. I don't think that's an outrageous thing to say. Justin Borough's next 2 games are away at Sunderland and Sheffield United. So a tough couple of weeks ahead for them. Should probably give a mention for Preston, Justin, because it is back-to-back wins in the league for just the second time this season. And of course, we have got to remember they had a really poor start to the season, didn't they? But they've quietly snuck out of the relegation battle, haven't they? It's like when you're on a night out and you can sense things are starting to turn a bit wild, so you just sneak off without saying anything, get yourself a kebab. That's kind of what Preston have done here. Yeah,
it's not been a fun night out, but it's been a night out where they've done the very basics. They've seen the mates, they've had a chat, and they're leaving the club. And they're going to go home with an early night with a nice kebab, but they're not got a hangover in the morning either. I think one thing I wanted to point out as well, they've lost just 2 games since December. So there's a fair few draws in that time, but I think that's an indication that this team under Heckingbottom is moving in the right direction. Obviously, there's a quality difference, but you look at this game in isolation. Yes, they conceded a lot of chances, but they took their own when they came, and that's obviously important. But yeah, I think they're a difficult side to play against, or they're becoming a more difficult side to play against with a bit more tactical edge than they had under Ryan Lowe, if you like.
Yeah, they've had a few impressive performances, I think, actually. The Borough game wasn't a great example of that, but they have been playing pretty well recently. It does seem like the Heck has finally settled with a back 3 after flicking between a back 4 and back 3 earlier in the season, and it's really working for them recently. Mads Frokjær has had a very good couple of games, and they seem to be gravitating back towards their natural 12th place, Justin. Although, having said that, since Christmas, only Oxford have won more points than Preston. So who knows? Maybe they could surprise us and go one step further, finish 11th. I don't know.
We don't like change.
I'm joking, of course, but it's always quite difficult to get too excited about Preston. But the Heck has got them going well. And the final game we'll discuss, Justin, is Sheffield Wednesday, who managed to halt the QPR runaway train by beating them 2-0. 3-word review for Wednesday from Tom, who says, back on it. Yeah, not the most shocking result of the weekend, but still a bit of a surprise because QPR, of course, have been flying since mid-November. Wednesday had just 1 win in 7 heading into this, so not one I was expecting, Justin.
I think Wednesday keeping a clean sheet is probably one of the biggest surprises. Obviously, QPR have been brilliant, but the fact that they managed to keep the scoreline normal, I think would be the biggest takeaway here. But, fair play. Also, Callum Patterson and Michael Smith scoring as well. He's just a throwback, your classic forwards. It was Patterson's first start in modern year, and I think that is an astounding thing. The fact that he's not been getting too many starts, but he's still around at Hillsborough. But yeah, I think this is it's a positive performance and a positive result. But you take a lot of confidence in them keeping a clean sheet because we talk about teams in the playoff conversation. Again, if they can maintain consistency, then there's a team there that could breach into that top 6. QPR fans as well. Heart goes out to them because they've been complaining about Barry Bannon turning into Prime Iniesta every time he plays against them, and they're just waiting for him to retire, which doesn't feel like it's close. So yeah, that's the scourge of QPR is Barry Bannon. Incredible stuff.
Zinedine Banan.
There we go.
And yeah, QPR weren't great in this one, which is a bit surprising considering they have been so good recently. But yeah, finally a bit of good news for Wednesday fans after a pretty miserable week and a bit. Shea Charles has returned to the club on loan, albeit reportedly on increased terms on what he was on before. It's after he was recalled. It's after he was recalled by Southampton, and I think it's for the best that he stays at Hillsborough, isn't it, Justin? He's been developing really, really well. So you don't want to disrupt that by sending him to a different environment where he might not be playing every week. So it's a good result for all parties, and Wednesday get arguably their player of the season back, and Southampton get more money than they were getting before. Everyone's happy. And hopefully this is the start of Wednesday doing a bit more business, because we, of course, have had it made pretty clear by Chansiri and Danny Rule that they hadn't met up yet to discuss transfer targets, even though we were more than halfway through the window. So fingers crossed they've kissed and made up, Justin.
Yeah, a lovely little peck and a handshake, you'd hope. But
imagine you worked at Sheffield Wednesday and you walked in on Chansiri and Danny Rule snogging.
I don't know, that's not an image I need, really. I don't really just cut the podcast there. Just finish there. I'm now unsettled. Do you want to move on?
Yeah, let's just move on. But yeah, Justin, we spoke about, we've done a roundup of all the championship action from the weekend, but it's not over yet in this game week, because the final bit of championship action is the mammoth clash on Monday night between third and first. It's Burnley v Leeds, a proper how's your mother, Justin, if ever there was one. The importance of this game has only been amplified further as well by Sheffield United's loss to Hull and Sunderland drawing with Plymouth. Because look, we were saying on Thursday how no one seems to be blinking in this automatic promotion race. Well, Sheffield United have been poked in the blooming eye, and Sunderland are left cowering in the corner as well. So it's a huge opportunity for one of these two to make the most of it. And a Leeds win will create a significant gap between them and the rest. A Burnley win would see them jump ahead of Sheffield United and go level on points with Leeds. So it's a huge game in the grand scheme of the championship season, isn't it?
Just looking at the points, you look at that, and it is massive. It is massive, and obviously it's saved for a Monday night on TV. I mentioned it's going to be under the lights, and that's just going to add to the stress and the pressure of it. You've got Scott Parker as well, and he's spoken about the anxiety that the Turf Moor crowd sometimes develops, and I think this is going to be an interesting test for Leeds in terms of taking that game to Burnley. And putting that home crowd under a lot of stress. And I think I wouldn't say they do turn, but once you feel nervousness in the air, it's very hard to shake off as a home side. So I think Leeds will try and feed off that. So I think when looking at it from that perspective, it's brilliant. You look at it from the points, Leeds could pull away, Burnley could close the gap, etc. There's just so much at stake here. So much at stake.
Absolutely. And because it is such a huge game, as we were saying at the top of the show, we will be doing a Reacts episode straight off the back of that one, and doing a live stream of our reaction to the game on our YouTube channel. So head over and subscribe if you haven't already, and join us tomorrow for a debrief on this cracker of a game. But Justin, it's now time for us to do the polls as the part of the show where we give the listeners 3 questions on Twitter, because we want to get their thoughts on everything to do with the championship. So the first question we asked was this: who's been manager of the season in the championship so far? Chris Wilder, John Eustace, Regis Labrise, or Tom Cleverley?
I think we've got to go Chris Wilder. I don't think that's wavered even in the face of defeat.
Yeah, well, we said Chris Wilder in our halfway team of the season, didn't we? And not much has changed since then for him to gone down massively in our estimations. 51% of people, though, said Regis Labrise. 22% said John Eustace. 18% said Chris Wilder. 9% said Tom Cleverley. Had a few Burnley fans say Scott Parker, which I'm not sure I necessarily agree with ahead of any of those 4, but he's done a good job this season, without a doubt. Just the next question we asked was this: which of these teams do you think is the most likely to go down? Derby, Luton, Portsmouth, or Stoke?
Derby. Oh, I've got so much to say about Derby. But it's Derby. It's got to be Derby.
Yeah, we'll talk more about Derby in tomorrow time very shortly. 36% of people said Derby, 31% said Luton, 27% said Portsmouth, 6% said Stoke. I feel like Stoke have got out of that a bit easily, in my opinion. And final question we put to listeners, Justin: what's the best jacket potato topping? Beans, cheese, chili, or tuna?
Cheese goes in all of that, by the way.
Yeah,
so
that's why I was a bit and ahhing about putting cheese in there, but carry on.
Chili is good, but I've recently become obsessed with beans. I say recently, the last couple of years. So beans and cheese is just, oh my God, bit of salt on top of the jacket potato when you're cooking it as well. Gets it crispy. Putting butter on the outside gets it really crispy. Beans, cheese, Filthy.
I've been having Marmite on my jacket
You're a
potatoes
fucking
recently,
disgrace.
which sounds obscene, but it is really, really nice. If you are a Marmite fan and you've never had Marmite on a jacket potato before, honestly, try it out.
So
It
fucking
works.
weird.
Justin, I would lick Marmite off your face. That's how much I love Marmite. 36% of people said cheese, 31% said beans, 20% said chili, 13% said tuna. Tuna deserves more love, in my opinion.
it doesn't. Tuna's disgusting.
What's wrong with tuna?
Tuna's disgusting. It's the worst thing that man has ever invented.
That's
give or take.
That's an obscene thing to say.
Give or take. Yeah.
But we will move on, Justin, because, of course, Patreon subscribers, don't go anywhere. We've got the extended edition of the weekend show coming up, which we like to call some more time. We'll be talking about another stinking loss for Luton Town, Ali El Hamadi to Stoke City, and a potential playoff dark horse. If you're not a Patreon subscriber, sign up to get some more time in every single weekend show. Head over to patreon.com/second tier. Link is in the description of this episode. But that's just about time for us here on the Second Tier podcast this week. We'll be back again tomorrow with our reaction to Burnley v Leeds. So we look forward to seeing you then for that. But this has been the Second Tier podcast. I've been Ryan Dilks.
I've been Justin Peach.
And a big thank you for listening.